Well, folks, thank you for being here. Thanks, Mark. So every time we try to just present a couple of different topics, different people show up, we talk about, and then people have questions on Agile. So one thing I wanted to share today for another maybe 5-10 minutes as a story of a lot of the people ask, like, what should a good product owner look like? Like when you show up and as a product owner. And I always go think back about this one product owner called Paul. And he's still a product owner, so I won't give his last name. He knows I'm talking about him today, right? He's like, "Are you going to say all the right things?" I said, "Absolutely." So I want to share with you maybe a little story for 5 minutes or so of why in his team, I thought he was one of my most favorite product owners, right? So and then maybe we'll open up to questions and discussions for a few minutes after that, and then hopefully we'll leave in another 15-20 minutes, right? So I'm going to share. I like drawing, as some of you know, so I'm just going to use my drawing tool here to kind of visually draw like the greatness of Paul, and hopefully it'll get better as I draw, right? So this, I'm just gonna more of a story, right? This is a couple of years ago. So this was in his team, right? So what this was for a bank, okay? So the bank wanted to build a payroll system for small business, right? So your salary and stuff like can be paid. So they had a very old system, which was many years old. So it was so old that nobody wanted to use it. So the bank, what they did is they said, let's go create a new version of this product, right? And so there was a small team formed, and this team. What was interesting about this team was it was kind of a world team, right? I've never been in a team like a class, true world team. Okay, so we had just this was me. I was the token Indian guy. We had another guy called Stan. Stan was Chinese. Okay, so then we had two guys from Ukraine. Oleg and Eugene, heavy accents, right? So they were in the team, and then we had two folks from the customer side. So one of them was Cameron, and one was I think this Stan and Cameron from the customer. So we had kind of a global team. So when the team formed, so first thing was we formed the team, and we had a Scrum Master in this team, right? And this team stayed together for almost 18 months. So I was in this team for almost 18 months, and I was one of the developer leads in this team, right? So first thing about was when we started this journey, we wanted to find a product owner, right? So we went to the bank and we said, who is a good candidate for a product owner? And they said, well, so one of the things we asked them is like, who knows this whole system, payroll system really well, right? Who knows it, right? So, and we never opened up with the question, who knows Scrum well, or we never even opened with the question of like, is there a product owner in your company? We just started by saying, who knows in your company the payroll system really well, right? So they went around, and they came back with this person called Paul, and they said, well, Paul has been he has been the call center customer, and he has pretty much taken every possible call, like, over the last 8 years. Today, he's the lead for the call center. So if there is someone who has seen every possible problem in our company, that is Paul, right? So essentially, he joined our team. Okay. Now, something unique about Paul is he had no idea, literally no idea about Scrum or Agile. He was clueless. He had never even built one product. Not even one product, right? So, and he had no clue how to work with us. Okay, so this is a bunch of, these are all Seattle-based people, highly qualified developers and engineers, right? So Paul shows up on day one, and he shows up on day one, and the first question he asked is, what am I supposed to do? Which was a awesome question, right? He's like, tell me more, what am I supposed to do, right? I think this is a great question as a product owner to ask, because he didn't say, I don't know anything about the product. He said like, okay, tell me team, how am I supposed to work with you, right? So immediately, I remember our Scrum Master, his name was Dan, so Dan and Paul would often sit together, and then he started learning a little bit about how to work with an Agile team, right? He learned about how to write a backlog. Like, what is a backlog? He learned about like what does, like, all software mean, right? So he understood in 1 week he got a little bit of boot camp. So the first thing every product owner needs is somebody to coach them, right? Somebody to coach them. So here was the Scrum Master who was his coach for almost the whole 18 months, right? So whenever Paul needed something about a Scrum, he would say, "Hey, Dan, can you tell me how to do this?" Right? It was not at all. He was never shy of asking the question. He would just he'll go to Dan, and Dan became his friend. They would go to lunch together and all of that, right? Now, one thing that we saw unique about Paul. So now our project started. So let's say we are sprinting here, and we have done around 4 sprints. So the first 5, 6 sprints, he got used to like how to work with the software team, right? Now, what was beautiful was in the beginning of the project, generally the product owners do something called user story workshop. So user story workshop is a kind of a requirements gathering session. So where the backlog for the team gets written, right? So Paul came to that session. So I remember we were all sitting in a room, in a chair in front of him, and here was Paul, and he had no idea how to run that session because he had never run a user story session before in his life. But he immediately said, "Hey, Dan, can you come here and help facilitate this?" Right? And I remember, like, Dan, in this case, the green color pen I'm using, right? So Dan stepped up, and I remember him explaining. He just started facilitating for Paul, right? So what was beautiful was in that 1 day session, we spent a day together. I remember, and I can't kid you guys, in 1 day we wrote nearly 1,300 backlog items, as a team, all because of Paul, and he just like went on and on and on telling a story, right? So what he was really good at is he was good at storytelling, right? And he was really good at storytelling. So that is the other skill unique about him, is his ability to tell a story. Means very natural, right? He wouldn't really, there's nothing, he didn't go for a storytelling training or something. By nature, he would say, "Well, let me tell you how they do payroll," and he would go give an example for 5 minutes of how a small business does payroll, whatever, right? So that's another key characteristics of good product ownership, is the ability to connect with the team and tell stories, right? And he got really good at it. So I remember, like, we saying, "Well, that much." So I cannot, this 1,300 stories we wrote on that 1 day. Out of that, we actually used around 650 of them in those 18 months. Okay, so that's all we used. The other 600, we gave it back to the bank, and the bank built afterwards. But what we found was those 650 was good enough, right? So I'll tell you a little bit more about him, right? The other thing that was very unique about him was every day. Now we had a stand up at 9:15. Okay, and almost all of us would naturally run into the office around 9 o'clock. Being in Seattle, late start, so 9 o'clock was like the norm. And we would be freaking out because every time we come in, Paul was already there. He was like 8:45. He had settled in his desk, and he's like, "What am I doing?" He would always ask this question, "What am I doing today with you guys?" So very cool question. What am I doing with you, right? And what it meant is we had no clue what to do with him because we were not even ready. We didn't know any code. Nothing was going on, right? But he started listening in and coming to the stand up. He would be in the stand up. So what happened was we went from being afraid that Paul was not there. Why is he here? To missing him on days he doesn't come as we went through these sprints, because one of the good characteristics of a good product owner is called available to the team, right? Available to the team. So 8:45 to 12:45 every day, which means roughly 4 hours or so. He was with us every day, and then he would go back to the bank and do whatever other work he was doing there, right? So this first 4 hours for us was very critical. So we actually would do all the work we would do with him in those 4 hours, like our sprint demos and anything we'll do was around that time. But we just really, so being available is a super, it's an important characteristic for a product owner, which I think he did really well, right? So available, ability to story tell, and then so on and on it went on, right? So I think, right, if you think about some of the skills, we can categorize them into three categories, right? So some of the skills of a PO are coachable, right? So we can coach. In this case, Dan was able to coach him. We were able to coach him because he was so open to learning, right? So some things is learnable, right? So he was able to learn on his own over time, right? And some things are like intrinsic, right? So this is stuff that we are born with, intrinsic, like being in time, like he was in time, being in time. Authentic, he was absolutely authentic. I mean, there was no two sides to Paul. He was the same Paul. When he gets upset, he got upset. When he would get angry, he would get angry. So one thing that happened a lot with us was a lot of disagreement, right? So in product teams, when everybody agrees, and he actually told us, guys, if you're just building whatever I'm telling you, if something is wrong, right? If you got to push me, you got to challenge me. So disagreement was a big part of what we were doing, right? So I think so two things, right? Being in time, being authentic. Those are things it comes with it, right? Now, from a coachable perspective, now domain skills, right? Now, in this case, Paul did have domain skills, but this is something we can coach. So when you join as a product owner, it's not going to happen that you will know everything up front, on day one, but you need to find somebody who can help you become successful over time, right? And constantly learning, right? So I remember Paul, like reading books, sitting with us and learning, testing. He would sit with us and say something like, show me how to do testing. He had no idea how to test, but he would sit with us and say how to test, right? So he was very curious, right? I think curiosity, was super important for him. And so that's kind of one of the things I want to talk about, right? The last thing I want to talk about is a scenario, right? So we built something. So all this was going on, right? So around the 12th sprint or so, 12 sprints, we did 2-week sprints. So 12 sprints is roughly what, couple of months later, okay? We built something, and then we showed this product, overall to him. And he's sitting there looking at it, and then he's like, not happy, right? Not happy. And he said, like, guys, I think we have missed the mark. We have missed the mark because I don't think you are understanding overall what I'm trying to convey to you, right? So then we kept asking him, what is that? We don't understand what he's saying. So can you tell us something more about why you're upset, right? What he did was, next day we come to work, and we were all given a ticket. We got an airline ticket. I don't know how to draw a plane, but we got an airline ticket to go to Cleveland. And he said, I'm going to take you to a customer, and I want you to sit with them when they do payroll, right? So we flew. I remember flying with him from Seattle to Cleveland, and then we went to this small business where we sat with the customer, and we saw how they did payroll with the old system, right? It was so bad. The old system was so bad. For 10 employees, it took them 4 or 5 hours to do payroll, right? And he said, so we were really quiet during that visit with the customer, and then we came back, and next day we sat through this product, and we understood we had built something very similar to the old product. What had happened was, in a curiosity to build something, we had actually built something which very close was like the old product, right? So what Paul did was, like, it's called kind of make it real, right? So make it real. So make it real. So bring the customers in front of the team. So that's really important, where he made this customer accessible to us. So then he said, guys, every month when you finish this product, you need to show it to this customer in Cleveland, and he's going to be our first prototype. So if that company is happy, I am happy, right? So many times what product owners do is they isolate the customer from the teams. The teams don't have direct access to the customer, right? But after our 12th sprint until the end of the project, we always had access to this Cleveland customer. We would always ship it to them, deploy to them, learn from them, right? So I think these kind of characteristics, right, of ability to be open, be coachable, storytelling, available, answer questions, right, and take accountability for all the things you do is what I think Paul made Paul an awesome product owner, right? And he would always do demos, like he would always take us to the demos to the bank, And he would always like celebrate us. He's like, I'm just so happy about my team. Today they're going to show these guys. And the days when we didn't have a demo, he would just manage it. He's like, don't worry, guys, he would protect us like anything, right? So because he was so passionate about us. So this product, and I end with this story, right? So this product was, after many years, right? This product went live, okay? And when it went live, we couldn't believe it. It had no defects, okay? Zero defects, because we had completely engineered it so nicely, and then we kind of missed him after the project. Couple of years later, I was in this place called Chennai, India, right, which is nothing to do. And I was doing a coaching for a team 3-4 years after this project was over, and this is a customer. I was coaching them how to write good code, right? So one of the team said, we want to show you an example of what good code is, and what good product is. So what had happened was, this bank had sold this product to some other bank, over time, and that bank has a big company in India which used to take care of the code. So I go to the team and I start looking at the code. I'm like, this code sounds very familiar, So I start looking at the code, looking inside the code. I'm like, damn it, this is the code we wrote like 3 years ago, 4 years ago. And I asked them, so how is it working? He said, I don't know what this team did, but everything is testable. There's no issues with this code. And it's working. We're just adding to it, but completely it's working, right? So I think good product. And if I think back about what made it so successful, it was less about the team, but it was more about how he made himself available, accountable, and kind of was with the team. It never felt like us versus them, right? So I think that's kind of the gist of what I want to leave with is that ability to have that one team idea and exposing the customers directly to you is kind of important, right? So with that, I want to close, and then I